to a new edition. I'm Nadia Sharby, and this week we're putting the focus on how France's COVID response has threatened its founding notion of liberté, or freedom. Between confinement, restrictions on movement, gatherings, but also the forcible shutting of shops, collective and individual rights have been dealt severe blows, all in the name of beating the pandemic. But the French haven't always swallowed this bitter pill willingly, especially when it comes to the sharing, collecting and tracking of medical data.
This is Stop COVID, France's latest weapon to take on the coronavirus. Once you've downloaded it, you don't have to input any personal information. While it's running, when another phone with the application on it comes within 1 meter for at least 15 minutes, the devices swap anonymous ID codes. If any one of these people declares they're positive for the virus, the others are told they may have been exposed to it. The program has just launched and is causing debate. Some are concerned about just how anonymous the data is. The developers are confident it's one of the most privacy-conscious apps out there.
L'application Stop Covid de mon téléphone, en fait, il faut comprendre qu'elle a passé son temps à échanger des petits messages, justement avec le Bluetooth, des petits messages « Hello, coucou, je suis là », avec un pseudonyme de l'utilisateur, un pseudonyme qu'elle va conserver pendant une durée assez limitée de 15 minutes. Ce n'est pas une information qui est remontée, il ne connaît aucun de mes pseudonymes, rien du tout. Juste mon historique de contact. Je pourrais dire que sur mon téléphone, c'est très probablement l'application la plus respectueuse de la vie privée qui s'y trouve.
The government's also rolled out 2 other schemes for tracing the spread of the disease based on 2 databases. One is filled out by COVID-19 testing laboratories, the other by all healthcare professionals who've dealt with a virus patient. At the National Centre for Scientific Research, some think this kind of surveillance could have other consequences.
Faire du traçage de personnes en protégeant totalement les données, c'est impossible, c'est un oxymore. Le fait qu'elle arrive en complément, en supplément des fichiers SIDEP et contacts Covid qui, eux, ne sont absolument pas anonymes, hein, ni même pseudonymisés la plupart du temps, ça rend l'ensemble du traitement de l'information extrêmement inquiétant pour les libertés individuelles.
France's independent data privacy body says the utmost vigilance is needed. Among its demands for the government schemes, people must be able to refuse to participate and must have the option to have their information erased at any point. It's also demanding that the data mustn't be used for longer than 6 months after the end of the health emergency.
Because this crisis plays out at a local level, its impact on basic freedoms isn't a blanket deal across the country. Instead, living in a green, red or orange zone comes with its own set of rules and regulations. Curfews, compulsory mask wearing, extended CCTV coverage, all have become part of the anti-COVID arsenal to varying degrees of legality, a situation that's all but redrawn France's civil rights map.
In the heart of Saint-Malo in Brittany, a costumed announcement.
Le maire de notre bonne ville a décrété obligatoire le port du masque dans les rues principales.
The temporary measures were put in place during long weekends in May.
Il ne s'agit pas pour moi de restreindre la liberté de nos concitoyens. Moi, je ne veux pas me retrouver dans la situation d'avoir un foyer de contamination qui démarre de Saint-Malo.
Cities like Nice and Sceaux tried to make masks mandatory, but the Council of State, France's equivalent of a Supreme Court, axed the move. In Cannes, the mayor went further and installed cameras in buses to check who was not wearing a mask. Markets have cameras now too. Officially, it's to compile statistics.
En fait, c'est un élément supplémentaire pour connaître juste les comportements et pouvoir, nous, municipalités, adapter ce que l'on doit faire. On va pouvoir ajuster, notamment sur un système de distribution, par exemple.
Similar surveillance has been set up around the Châtelet-Léal metro station. The cameras could one day be used for more than just filming individuals. And that's what digital rights groups fear.
Et c'est un peu un pied dans la porte qui est mis, c'est un prétexte pour installer des caméras avec du logiciel performant dessus. Et ensuite, un peu plus tard, quand on sera habitué aux caméras, leur mettre des nouvelles fonctionnalités qui sont beaucoup plus inquiétantes, qui est type reconnaissance faciale, ou en tout cas identifier des personnes pour leur mettre des amendes s'ils n'ont pas de masque dans le métro.
And then there are the curfews. During the lockdown, nearly 200 French cities put them in place. In 5 different cases, judges deemed such measures illegal. And in early May, 2 rights groups sued the Paris Police Department for using drones to film whether Parisians were following the lockdown requirements or not. On May 18th, France's Council of State said the drone surveillance needed to cease immediately.
For a better understanding of the legal implications of these emergency measures and a sense of how the French are responding to seeing their rights curtailed, let's cross now to our guest. Law professor Bruno Pi specialises in health law and professional confidentiality, and he joins us from Nancy in the east of France. Hello, thank you very much for being with us.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Now, could you start by giving us a legal overview of what a public health emergency means here in France?
From a legal standpoint, it's a situation that constitutes an exception to the rule of law, for which legislation was initially passed on March the 23rd and then prolonged with more legislation, so as to implement measures that by definition are a departure from the usual rules of society, the rules that make up what we call common law.
What would you say are the most worrying infringements on France's civil liberties?
Beyond the measures themselves, my concern is that we basically had to handle a health emergency, which is understandable, but that meant improvising a little. And it's that sense of improvisation that I find worrying. The state simply clamped down. There was no subtlety or progression in its response. Everything was immediately put on hold, shut down. Act first, think later. Aren't there better ways to prepare for such cases? That's the key issue we need to address in the months and years to come.
So is it technology that sets this crisis and the government's response apart from previous ones?
As a legal expert, what I really find significant in this case is society's total amnesia regarding previous crises. In the 90s and early 2000s, HIV was the virus that we had no control over, and for which we still don't have a vaccine to this day. But it was handled as an issue of public health, with prevention messages, diagnosis, testing and care. That's still the case, without threatening medical confidentiality, without creating a tracking tool. Let me be deliberately provocative here and ask you to imagine what would happen if we set up a Stop AIDS app that allowed you to know each week whether you've been within a metre of someone with AIDS. Obviously, there'd be uproar. But today, the model's changed. It's all about technology. You can snitch on someone, report them to a task force that police patients. And I explained in a recent article, what this crisis has demonstrated is that we've gone from monitoring a virus to monitoring the patients.
But aren't these measures and their consequences reversible?
I'm convinced that once the fears dissipated, that terror that really paralysed, anaesthetised France for 6 weeks to 2 months, once that's dealt with, we'll get our senses back. We're now seeing authors, institutions speaking up. The Court of Cassation just put its foot down, saying that a health emergency doesn't warrant prolonging custodies without referring to a judge. Because for 2 months, it wasn't up for discussion. By decree, all detentions had been automatically prolonged. Now, finally, those fundamental principles are respected once more. We're coming back to a more rational approach, which we'd lost during these 2 months of collective fear. And I do believe that collectively we'll make the right decisions, and I trust in the collective intelligence of the population, politicians, scientific experts, lawyers, and even perhaps journalists.
Bruno Pi, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Now, while caution seems to have thrown to the wind a number of fundamental freedoms, it's not just public officials who've taken to extreme measures. Private entities are also using technology to adapt to the times. Among them is prestigious business school HEC that's conditioned taking part in its online exams to students accepting surveillance software that's more than a little intrusive.
Bonjour.
Capucine Derieux is a student at the prestigious business school HEC. With the coronavirus, this year's final exams are held online and at home. To ensure test takers aren't cheating, HEC had students install surveillance software. First, they're asked to film their rooms to record that they're alone, provide identification, and then, as the exam begins, the computer tracks and records every move.
C'est une prise de contrôle totale de l'ordinateur. Je ne suis pas d'accord, mais il s'avère que si on n'accepte pas ce contrat, on est automatiquement radié de la session d'examen de juin. Donc j'ai accepté.
HEC's Dean of Programs said the school needs to be able to verify if a student was cheating, and that the surveillance data would be destroyed after the exams. Capucine and nearly 300 other students signed an open letter criticizing the intrusive nature of the software. They say it infringes on their privacy, and they aren't alone. Students from a number of universities have raised a red flag, saying such practices need to be kept in check to protect their civil liberties.
And that's where we're leaving this edition. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to France 24.